LAWsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello, all you LAWsome listeners. Today on the show, I'm excited to be talking with Isaac Marcushamer, a partner at DGIM Law, a modern business law firm dedicated to guiding clients through intricate business, litigation, and insolvency issues. Before establishing DGIM Law, Isaac held the distinguished position of Chief Innovation Partner at Berger Singerman, a role never before seen at the firm. In this position, he spearheaded the discovery and the integration of groundbreaking technologies, helping to elevate client services. These innovations have since been seamlessly incorporated into the DGIM Law's approach. For DGIM Law, this is what they call law evolved. Alongside these accomplishments, Isaac is well versed in the FTC's concerns regarding startups, especially in disseminating misleading information and handling personal data, as seen with platforms like ChatGPT. His solution was to search for artificial intelligence designed specifically for lawyers. Today, Isaac will share his insights on the quest for the perfect AI companion in law. He'll also dive into the crucial considerations law firms must address due to the rapid technological evolution we find ourselves in. Very, very interesting topic. So welcome, Isaac. We're eager to learn from your experiences and your insights today.
Thank you so much, Tanner. Appreciate being here.
You know, you've been in the AI, I guess you could say, world for a while now, and really researching this specific to law. And we can't turn on the TV or turn on our computers today without hearing about AI, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Seemingly it's everywhere, and so it's obviously something that's important to the industry itself within law. You being in this topic for quite a while, you likely have some unique perspective around this, specifically around what we would consider hazards or some things to be very aware of before diving, both feet in at one time. Interestingly enough, the FTC's comprehensive investigation into OpenAI magnifies several of those apprehensions that you have around AI, but I would say on a much larger scale. So maybe let's just start there. What are some of those apprehensions? What came out of this investigation, and what should law firms be aware of?
Thank you for the question. The two biggest issues with the FTC's investigation really revolve around personal identifiable information, right? How is that being used in AI? And what are the standards to protect, right, sensitive information? And then, so that's one piece, right? What information is going in? And then the other problem is, what is it spitting out, right? And that's the kind of the famous case that I think a lot of people have heard, where an associate up in New York used ChatGPT to draft a brief, and it was a great brief, and they submitted it, and the court looks at it, read it, and said, wait, I wanted to read the underlying cases, except they don't exist, right? And that stems from a problem built into computers. Computers don't really like lawyers' favorite word of it depends. They like black and white answers, right? Yes or no. But when it comes to a computer, it doesn't really know how to do it depends very well. And so it's about really bringing this kind of technology into day-to-day uses. That's where you see this tension, especially pronounced for lawyers, right, in terms of how they handle their day-to-day lives and using AI as a tool. So that's kind of the big overview. Happy to dive into any of those that you think are interesting. You pick them.
Well, so, I mean, you've clearly been doing everything you can to stay ahead of this on behalf of your clients, and I applaud you for that. But I'm curious about this, in building standard operating procedures and things to protect your clients and protect your firm itself. What criteria has been established around this concept, especially given this investigation that the FTC went through? What there is influencing or validating some of the criteria you've established in the legal setting?
So our criteria for picking any new technology, right? Forget about AI, but just any new technology. And this stems, from my previous role at Berger Singerman, right? Understanding how you roll out and identify new technologies for a law firm, right? First, you got to figure out what the problem is. Then you need to look at what the available solutions are, right? And understand what those particular risks are. Then you test, then you implement, right? And then you roll out. So that's that's the workflow. And we applied the same framework to AI. Now, AI sounds cool, But it's not the first time that brand new technologies have been introduced to society or have been introduced in particular to the law field, right? So if we asked lawyers who were practicing in the 80s how they ran their practice, you would imagine that people were either going to libraries, right, where they had compact discs that they would get every month or every year or whatever else it is, with all the new cases that they would then be able to search through. The internet was a complete change, right? The idea of a searchable online database that we all take for granted today was something that lawyers had to wrestle with. Well, how do you do it? Can you do it? Is it effective? Is it efficient? Is it safe? Does it have the tools and safeguards to know that the data you are looking at in the internet, right? Brand new term, brand new idea, is the same data that are in those books that are in those libraries. Now, if you've been to any law firms recently, none of them have libraries anymore, right? So I think AI is just the next iteration. It's the 2020s version of the internet, right? To the 90s and early 2000s. That's what AI is. So we took the same principles, right? About being cautious, being smart, but not rejecting the idea of moving forward when we started to look at AI for our firm and see what made sense. So we didn't say, no, we can't do it. We said, we have to find a way to do it. And what has to be true in order for that to happen? And for us, it was three things. One, we need to be able to protect client data. Two, we needed to know that our data was ours and we were the owners of the data. And three, we needed to know that there were safeguards built in to ensure that whatever information we were getting back was indeed real information. And then as part of that, we don't use it to actually draft anything that gets submitted to third parties, but it's as a research tool, right? So you would ask the AI system that we use, what is the legal question that we want to have answered? It spits back a memo or a list of cases, and then one of us goes through and reads it. But that time to collate all those cases goes away. So what would take a few hours now takes somewhere between 6 to 10 minutes for our clients. So it's a tremendous value in terms of efficiency.
No doubt. And that's really what's getting business owners and lawyers alike excited about this type of technology, and then ultimately what will be influenced because of that. But there's no question, especially with the FTC getting involved here, there's heightened regulatory focus and emphasis here. And so I know listeners, many of which are lawyers, are hearing what you're saying, but they're asking, what specifically do I need to be doing? Should I be adopting any new criteria when I'm implementing potential, new tech tools, new AI in my everyday practice? What have you learned, Isaac, that you can ultimately share with the market here?
So the first thing is we realized that you cannot just use ChatGPT, right, the public login. That's not going to work. And it's not really going to do what you want it to do other than get you probably into a lot of trouble. So you have to source a company, right, that has used the idea of learning language models, right, which is the basis of what makes ChatGPT so cool, and find a company that is dedicated to lawyers, right, has reputation, has some longevity. I'm a little biased against startups unless, they're truly there. And then you have to do some of that nasty lawyer stuff, which is actually read the terms and conditions that are at the bottom of the website. So we spent, one of my partners and I spent days picking through terms and conditions of various different websites and software tools to understand how they address the concerns that we had as lawyers. And then we overlaid that with the rules of professional ethics, right, that govern the profession. I suspect they're fairly similar in all states, but we have a duty to our clients to preserve and securitize their data. And we felt, right, that as long as the tool we were using was at the same level of security that we use with respect to, Microsoft, right, because our firm is cloud-based. So what we use with respect to Microsoft to ensure that, our data that is housed in a cloud is safe, we wanted that same level, right? So you start to, like I said at the beginning, you start to use the various transitions and iterations of technology over time, and you just apply it to a new setting, right? So the technology is new and cool, but the analysis is actually pretty old, right? You did it with the internet. We did it with the move from server-based and firms controlling their data to a cloud-based model, right? Most small firms today operate in some kind of cloud, even some of the larger firms. And then, right, now we're just doing that with AI. And again, you're just looking at the big concerns, right? So we found a program that has safety mode. It only uses cases that are curated by humans, right? We found a program where we own our data. So we are free to upload and download our data. And we found a program where they're not using our data to train their model, right? Those are the three big concerns that if you read through what the FTC is doing with respect to OpenAI, the big concerns are you're using people's stuff, personally identifiable information, to train your model. You're not entirely sure how secure this stuff is, right? And it produces junk sometimes because it's not entirely sure, right? So you don't have all those guardrails. So it's very cool from a computer science perspective how far they're pushing the envelope. But as a lawyer, I don't want to be at that edge, right? I want to kind of be towards the bottom or middle of the pack in terms of technology, so it develops a little bit. And so the AI tool that we have, it will not draft a legal document. The most it'll give you is a memo. So my people have to still go back and do the fundamental drafting themselves, but we are able to double check and do our research a lot faster. And it's really cool because it can search through documents, right? I mean, the AI tools that are out there, it's not just about research and legal research. It's also about getting through the voluminous number of documents that are created, right? I mean, cases these days are just thousands or tens of thousands or millions of emails. Getting through that with humans is astronomically expensive. Having a computer do that and narrow it down very quickly can be very powerful.
No doubt in that, but naturally brings a number of other challenges and things to consider. And just as you're speaking to, it really forces firms to reevaluate their standard operating procedures, how they're working through certain processes and checks and balances in that. But the firms that are investing in that, much like you've done, Isaac, it's paying off dramatically. I mean, we all heard when you said something that used to take a couple hours now takes just a matter of minutes. And when you compound that case after case after case, you're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands in revenue over the course of a year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so it does two things. It's hundreds of thousands less, potentially less in legal spend, right? Which is a really interesting perverse incentive that occurs in the law business, right? Because many firms are purely hourly based. So the longer it takes me, the more profitable it is. So this hurts the profit center, right? So that associate, a bit based on the general pyramid that law firms have, that associate that was going to spend 3 hours researching at $500, $600, $700 an hour, all of a sudden can only bill 0.2, right? And maybe another 0.5 or an hour from reading the memo. That's a reduction in potential fees.
Yeah, it
does make it more efficient. From our perspective, right, a firm like ours, which is designed to try and align incentives as much as possible with our clients, it allows us to get aggressive with non-hourly pricing and provide certainty to our clients. Because now I know that if a legal issue comes up, at least that first shot at research is 10 to 12 minutes to get the answer to a question versus do I really need to invest 2, 3, 4 hours of a client's time, and at a $500 or $1,000 an hour, those differences can be material and stack up over the course of a case. And so there is an efficiency bonus that I think firms that are playing a long or infinite game are going to be able to see that it will help with their business, even if short term it makes less money on each particular client matter.
That's fascinating to me, because that just shows how quickly the business of law will begin to evolve as more firms embrace this technology, and it ultimately makes them more competitive. And I think you hit it on the nail there when you're saying, you're doing it out of service to the client itself, and client first mindset as opposed to top line revenue mindset is a different thing. And that's ultimately what's going to influence, in my opinion, more business growth, the firms that are embracing that technology and ultimately taking the benefit from it and applying it to the client. In most instances, ultimately the firm or the business itself will be served in that. But I'd like to take another moment just on this overall concept with the FTC's probe into OpenAI. And other recent events are where these types of technological companies are being further investigated around many of the points you've already made, particularly security around personal data. But your involvement in this gives you a really unique vantage point. And so I just want to make sure that we've hit on all the aspects related to operating a business, specifically around strategic decisions for law firms. How do you feel like this playing out, this high profile event of the FTC and the OpenAI scenario, how is it potentially going to shape how law firms operate a business, specifically around making better decisions and adopting technology? Anything else that you would hit on there?
So I think the firms that want to be at the forefront, right, in the vanguard of pushing forward with technological innovation, like I believe ours is, are going to find ways to work through the challenges that are going to come up, right? So we found a way how to find a provider that meets the challenges, that doesn't have the OpenAI problems. We have internal procedures, right? No, we're not allowed to use OpenAI, the plain OpenAI for client service work, right? You can't upload any client documents. You can't ask it any or input any personally identifiable information, et cetera, right? So we have our procedures internally to safeguard our firm with respect to what is, what use of this technology is, right? So we're trying to be responsible technology users. I think that that's the only way to go forward. The FTC is not going to kill the technology. It might kill OpenAI, right? It might hurt them, but the learning language models, that's it. They're here, right? I was thinking yesterday, what is my daughter, who's in 7th grade, she's 12 years old, what is her college experience going to be like in a few years, given the rapid evolution of learning language models versus what I went through, right, where we barely had internet? So there is a very different world that we're about to enter. No one's entirely sure how it's going to shake out. I think the FTC and some of the other investigations into that very far edge of what do we do about privacy and how do we balance all these concerns will take time to kind of shake out. I mean, it's not that different than you look at the SEC and Bitcoin. Was it or wasn't a security, and how long that took, if that process is even done, but just how long that took for the government regulators and the competing balances to catch up to each other until it's allowed to be used. But that didn't stop people from adopting the technology. Right. We're in the same spot, right, with AI. The idea of what happens if it says a bad thing, what happens if it's got information it shouldn't have. Like those are real problems that have to be addressed, but you're never putting this genie back in the bottle. I mean, it's out. So I think the only way through it is to embrace it responsibly, with the consistent with the ethos and ways that firms want to operate. And for us, that's putting client first and recognize the humanity of the law.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, as listeners hear that, many of which are actively practicing law like you are, Isaac, and managing a practice, never short on things to do or focus on. And so I guess the question is, how can someone continue to operate at a successful law firm and practice law all while keeping up with the advancements of this technology? Have you found any tips or any best practices in staying informed when it comes to AI opportunities?
So for us, it's driven twofold, right? One is you got to be, if you're going to run a practice, you're going to be a lawyer, you have to stay up to date with what's happening just generally in the world. So most of the big AI developments get reported somewhere. The second one is we have at our firm, there's 2 of us who part of our role, built into our job description, is to take problems identified by our team members and see if there are technological solutions. Nice. So what we do is we don't say, oh, there's a really cool piece of technology, how do we integrate it, right? First question we ask is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Because if you start there, then it's an easy filter to see if the technology works, because most of the tech pieces are really cool, right? We're still looking internally for an AI program that could do a lot of that day-to-day administrative function, calendaring, the follow-ups. I mean, so much of lawyering is just harmonizing schedules, right? And there are programs and tools, but fundamentally at the end of the day, it would be amazing to have an AI feature that would be able to interact with other people through your email saying, hey, we need to set a call. Here's access to my calendar. Here's access to your calendar. Here are the recommended times, right? As opposed to the calendar links and the 700 emails back and forth, or, something has to move. So there's a lot there outside of the really sexy, litigation, document drafting, discovery stuff, like just nuts and bolts of running businesses. So much of it is scheduling meetings. Some of the really neat features that we are testing now internally have to do with, note taking during internal meetings. We won't use them yet with client meetings, but we're starting to think about using them internally, right? Because it creates agendas, it creates follow-ups, right? So all those things that before would require human interaction, if it makes the lawyers and the non-lawyer team members' jobs easier, it allows us to all move up the scale in terms of efficiency and move up the scale in terms of higher level work. And that, for at least for us, we think is the path forward long-term to be a smaller firm and compete with firms that are much larger.
And it's being methodical. I mean, I love your framework. It's simple, but often the most simple frameworks are the most effective because they're repeatable. And starting with pain points or problems within your firm, I just want to stress that to our listeners, because all too often, it's every single day in our tech business, I'm getting something on my desk of something new software, new technology, something to make our lives easier. And it can get overwhelming. It can get overwhelming to people in the tech business. It can especially get overwhelming to a lawyer. And so starting really more on the end of what is preventing us from being as successful as we can be? What are those pain points? What are the problems? And triaging based on that, I believe, is extremely valuable and will help to focus and allow this to be much more palatable, I think, to most law firms. So Isaac, I'll take a slightly different approach here as we wrap up this conversation. Given your balanced approach and your expertise between both law and technological innovation, the challenge of marketing AI solutions to potential clients, I believe, could present opportunities, but also maybe some potential challenges. And that may be in a place that you've considered, but I know other law firms have considered, how can we continue to make ourselves more competitive and unique to the market, and maybe AI is that angle, right? So that's a question that a lot of firms are asking themselves, but it really comes down to communication of that, how, when, how to effectively communicate what you're doing, how you're utilizing AI to the market. But specifically, from your experience, how should law firms approach marketing any AI-driven capabilities that they're leveraging for their firm? Is there anything you've found that specifically helps to build trust, showcase value, and not maybe bring in potential flaws or concerns to the marketplace?
So I think in your last statement, you actually had the answer, right? So my belief and our firm's belief in one of the core ideas we are built on, right, is this idea of true trust between a client and their lawyer, right? And so that isn't about whether I use an Apple computer or a Dell computer. It's not built on whether I use LexisNexis or Westlaw, right? It's not built on whether I use AI or I sit there in the library researching books. Most of the time, my belief is that clients don't really care how you get there. What they want is they have a problem, they're looking to you for a solution, and they want you to execute and help them get to where they want to go, or the best possible outcome. So the idea of marketing an AI-run law firm, to me, is kind of at the antithesis of the humanity of law, right? This is one of those professions where you're never going to replace, I believe, that fundamental human interaction that's built by trust. Yes, the computer will make me and my team more efficient. It will make us better. It will make us quicker. It allows us to respond to things without as much effort, but it's not going to replace that bond between, lawyer and client. And so when you start filtering it that way, to me, I don't know that necessarily marketing AI is a business savvy thing to do. I think it's no different than lawyers trying to market that they did online research in the 90s or early 2000s, right? Like, I don't recall ever seeing those ads. I don't think anybody else would, and they would seem kind of funny now, right? So we will get to a point, I believe, where every single law firm is using AI in some capacity or not. I don't know if it's in 2 years, in 5 years, or in 25 years, but we will be there. But I don't think that will ever replace the humanity of it. And so that requires, people to be smart on how you deploy this technology. And yes, we are an early adopter. Yes, we're an early embracer. Yes, we're trying to do it responsibly. But that doesn't mean that we should just, go out there and say, oh, look at us because we're using AI. At the end of the day, it's about your skills as a human that make the difference with respect to what you do as a lawyer.
Isaac, this whole discussion has been refreshing to me. You've given both myself and our listeners some sound advice in getting the ball rolling with this. But I'd like to ask you as we wrap up here, any questions you would have wished I would have asked you?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I'll leave you with just a couple of takeaways, if I might.
Please.
That we kind of run with. So I believe AI is here to stay. It will get bigger. It will get better. It will get different. If we look at Internet 1.0 versus where we are today and whatever it is, Internet 3.0 or 5.0 or whatever they call it, it's a very different experience. But, for people who lived through those iterations, it's amazing to see how far we've come in such a short period of time. The pace of technological change will only increase. So, if you can adopt we're going to fight it and not do it mentality, or we're going to embrace it, our firm has chosen to embrace it. If you're going to embrace new technology, terms of service, data ownership, smart incremental decisions. And then the last one, which is what I hit on before, artificial intelligence is just that, right? It's artificial. It will never replace a lawyer's judgment, and it will never replace that humanity of human interaction. And so relying on it to run a case is impossible. This is a tool. It still needs to be driven by a human.
Isaac, thank you again. What's the best way for listeners to find you or contact you?
The best way is you can find all the information on our website, www.dgimlaw.com, or through my email, isaac@dgimlaw.com.
It's been such a pleasure. Thanks again, Isaac.
Thanks so much, Tanner.
LAWsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next LAWsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.